on the session earlier, we're looking at probably giving others some time to join us. So we're saying we should probably give 5 more minutes before we start so that we can have more people join today's session. Thank you all very much for being on this session. We appreciate you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for staying put on the session. You're all welcome once again. Good morning to you all. My name is Eric Shobukola Oluwafumilayo, the Business Support Officer here at LSETF. Thank you all for staying put. I see very much that a lot of people are creatively putting up their write-up on the chat box. We see you. Thank you all very much. We see all your write-up. You're welcome once again to today's session. Quickly, before we go into the session, I'd like to take us on what LSETF stands for. Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, LSETF, was established by the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund Law in 2016. The fund's mandate is to achieve through the provision of access to affordable finance to nano, micro, small, and medium enterprises, training of youth in technical and vocational skills, business support services to entrepreneurs, and recommendation of processes to improve ease of doing business in Lagos State. Similarly, LSETFs develop and implement interventions targeted at technology ecosystem within Lagos State. It is the mission of LSETF to enable Lagos residents realize their aspiration by providing leverage, access to finance, as well as continuously support the growth of MSMEs in Lagos State through our various collaborations, business advisory sessions, access to finance opportunities, and capacity building initiatives, such as these webinar sessions that we're having this morning. Our today's theme for the session is impact storytelling, communicating your business performance with stories. The session seeks to teach business leaders how to use specific narrative to effectively communicate the impact of your business and inspire actions combined with data, evidence, and personal narratives. To this end, at the end of the session, as a participant, you are expected to learn the following: the how, the why, and when the impact storytelling would be good for your business. What impact storytelling entails, including the purpose and usage of impact storytelling. Who should be telling impact stories? Is it for not-for-profit organizations alone, or for government organizations and corporate agencies? And we have with us today on the session a very versatile facilitator who is good in the field of communication, and she's here to share with us a great wealth of knowledge in person of Sheila Ojei. Sheila Ojei is a director of strategy, partnership, and stakeholder management here at Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, an agency under the Lagos State government with the mandate to create an enabling environment for job and wealth creation, like I had said earlier. She is a public-private sector partnership and impact communication expert with experience in leading funding and partnership strategies, communication for impact, and implementing development strategies. Sheila serves public, multinational, development, and private sector institutions on partnership, stakeholders management, board relations, and impact communication. And notable achievements includes establishing partnership in youth development, skills acquisition, MSME support, as well as organizing several roundtable featuring policy actors, industry leaders, and development partners in the creative, digital, and agriculture sector. A communication impacts has spanned local and international organizations such as United Nations Women, Shehu Yaradua Foundation, Ford Foundation, and many more. She holds MBA from Trinity College, Dublin. She holds a master's from Regent University, UK, and also a bachelor degree in accounting from St. John University, USA. Kindly join me to welcome Sheila Ojei as she takes on the stage and educates us on today's topic. Sheila, you're welcome. Let me see it in the chat box that we're welcoming her. Roll the drum. Let us welcome Sheila. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you. Thank you so much for me. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this very interesting session on, well, impact/business storytelling. So first things first, a lot of times we hear a lot about storytelling. Everywhere we turn, there's one thing or the other. It's almost like storytelling has become the new thing. However, I would just like us to do a little bit of differentiation between what is impact storytelling and what is business storytelling. Reason because you will find that we will touch on both impact storytelling and business storytelling today. So impact storytelling is basically a type of storytelling that focuses more on social impact. It's known more in the social impact space. A lot of the NGOs, the development organizations, it's really around what you are doing when it comes to social impact. You can also find companies in the private sector as well also have impact storytelling because it has to do with whatever they're doing that affects the social impact space, right? And then we now have business storytelling. So business storytelling it's actually the art of using stories to communicate and connect with your stakeholders. So from employees, your customers, your suppliers, your vendors, your shareholders, basically anyone that is involved with your organization. And so the purpose of business stories and business storytelling isn't for entertainment, right? It's really more for communicating your specific goal, the desired outcome, or just telling your performance as an organization and where you are headed, right? So now that we've done that differentiation, we can then go straight into it. I believe the team will have like material available for everyone who's actually partaking in this session at the moment. So before we go into storytelling, let's just talk about communication. Why is it important for a business to actually communicate? Why is it important for a business to communicate its performance? And there are a few reasons. One of them is transparency. So sharing business performance data with those involved, so your stakeholders, it fosters transparency and trust. What I mean by that is when your shareholders or your employees or your customers and the general public can access accurate and timely information about your performance, they can make more informed decisions and also assess like the prospects. So when you're looking at shareholders, you're looking at the prospects of the business, the future of the business. Then there is accountability. By communicating your performance to stakeholders, you can be held accountable for your actions and your decisions. So it encourages a sense of responsibility. I guess specifically, it would be encouraging a responsibility culture, and it helps prevent unethical or illegal behavior. Then you have strategy alignment, which is very important. By sharing your business stories or telling your business performance through stories, you are able to share your performance data, and then you are able to show how it aligns to your strategy and aligns your strategy with your goals as an organization. So it ensures that everybody involved is on the same page. Then we have learning. So it's important that by sharing your stories, you are also able to learn. So this thing we say is learning is continuous. So you don't know it all as a business owner. You are able to learn from your stories to know what issues have risen from previous decisions, from the background of what might have happened, and then also identify areas of improvement or areas for scale. And then finally, which also goes back to transparency, is really just about confidence, specifically investor confidence. So if your business, for instance, has shareholders, or you are considering raising equity, because we find a lot of that now, especially right in the tech space and some non-tech companies as well, where they're trying to raise equity, it's important to be able to share stories about your business performance. Why? Your shareholders or potential investors need to have confidence in your performance and also know if they should maintain, invest, or maybe increase their investments. So those are just highlighting why communication is important. And it's not something that can be, say, underestimated or overestimated. We always need to communicate as business owners. It's very important for us to communicate as business owners. So we've gotten the communication bit out of the way. And by the way, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So I know that my colleague Fumi will be compiling the questions, and we will be able to answer the questions at the end of the presentation. So I'll do my best to ensure that we have less timing for the presentation and more timing for questions. But yes, so that's just basically just putting that out there. But for communication, we've addressed the importance of communication, so it can't be underestimated, right? Now let's talk about storytelling, which is the reason why we are here, right? Storytelling is a buzzword. So whether it be product storytelling, because you will hear so much about it, you will hear there's product storytelling, you will hear brand storytelling, you will hear impact storytelling, you will hear business storytelling. So why is storytelling effective? Why is it effective, and why is it important? First things first, which is what I tell everyone, we all like to gist, and stories are basically gist, right? So whether it's impact gist or business gist or whatever you want to call it, stories is basically gist, right? And what does stories do for us? What do stories do for us? Number one is called emotional connection. So stories have the power to create an emotional connection with your audience, whoever your audience is. So it can help you engage and motivate them. So this emotional connection can make the data more memorable and impactful. Just to give an example, if you were going to come and talk about the stats of, say, businesses in a particular state. So let's use, for instance, stats that we use in LSETF. So we talk about the total number of MSMEs in Lagos State. We talk about the impact of, say, COVID-19. We talk about the impact of skills gap and everything. We can come here and tell you all of that. And the honest truth is you would not remember half of what we have said unless we tie it to one person who is a beneficiary, or we tie it to an image of a particular MSME who has been affected, say, by COVID-19 and has been able to overcome the business challenges. And because you might also know people who have gone through these challenges, you are able to connect. That's what stories do. It's that emotional connection that is very necessary in telling your stories. Then it also provides context. In providing context, stories can help with data. We can easily come and talk about our financial statements, our debits and credits, and say, oh, we have this, we've acquired new assets, this is the liabilities, this is this is that. But it's not meaningful unless there's a story tied to it. So if you're going to buy an asset, say you wanted to buy a new delivery truck, why did you buy the delivery truck? That is what the story will tell you. Your balance sheets or your financial statements will not tell you that, but your stories will give context as to why you needed to get that delivery truck. And it's simple. You needed to be able to deliver to more people. You needed to increase your market expansion because you saw that you were losing money because of not being able to deliver to certain parts of Lagos, for instance. Then there's simplicity. Like I said, we all like to gist. So stories helps with simplifying complex conversation and complex information by presenting it in a narrative form. So I can come here and roll out a bunch of ratios to you and everything, but even with all the ratios that I'm rolling out to you, it's not going to have any form of impact because it's too complex. So you have to be able to understand what it is that I'm trying to explain. So what stories do is help simplify information. Then there's engagement, right? So we need to have people engaged. You need to have people understand what it is that you're trying to say and also be engaged in what information that you are giving them. And finally, persuasion. Well, persuasion is more around when you're marketing, right? Or when you're selling equity or any form of sales. And so what stories do is it helps building on your emotions or the emotions of the audience as well as their values. You are able to persuade them to buy into your product, buy into your strategy, or just buy into the business. So that's just like the summary of why stories are important. And I'll just like the different points on why stories are important. 1 is emotional connection. 2 is providing context. 3 is simplicity. 4 is engagement. And 5 is persuasion. I see someone was asking about slides. The slides are going to be shared after the session. So please be on the lookout, for that. So by using stories to communicate our business performance, companies, or let me just say entrepreneurs, can make their data more memorable, impactful, and persuasive. So we know that stories are effective. We've established that fact, which is the reason why everyone is here today, right? But what kind of stories can you actually tell when you're telling your business performance stories? I find that over the course of my experience in this, I find that this is often a struggle for certain businesses. So they want to tell stories, but how do they tell the stories? What kind of stories should they be telling? And truth be told, there's so many versions, there's so many stories, but I will just give you like a quick hack of certain stories that always stand out. One is your customer success stories, right? AKA testimonials. And basically what your customer success stories are just stories that show how your business has helped your customers achieve their goal or solve their problems. Every business, no matter what, every business, whether it's for service, whether it's a product, is created to solve a problem. If your business is not solving a problem or your product is not solving a problem, then maybe you don't have a viable business, right? Or a scalable business. So because every business has been created to solve a problem, it means that people who engage with your business, whether through service or products, are impacted by your products and your service, right? So if they have been impacted by it, especially when you have cases of return customers, they should be able to tell stories. They should be able to talk about how your business has helped them achieve their goals. That is a story that you can easily share because it's not just you as the business owner marketing yourself. You also have customers who are now your brand ambassadors, right? Ambassadors for your product and for your business in general. Then you have employee stories. Now, this is often overlooked. And this stories just showcases the achievements of employees and how they contribute to the overall business. So for instance, maybe you have someone who joined the organization or your business as an intern, right? And from being an intern, they're able to grow into a fixed role, a fixed term role, a permanent role in the institution. And then this employee is now able to tell stories of how the business not only helps them to impact lives, whether through a service or through a product, but how it also helps them and why they are believers in your product or your service. Your employees should be your #1 fan. They should be your brand ambassadors. They should be the ones that believe in the product because they are, or believe in the service because they are part and parcel of the organization and of the business. So it's very, very important that you are able to tell your employee success stories. Then you have what we call origin stories. Now, I find that a lot of people tend to do this. So they talk about how they started, where they are now. And these stories are actually very, very important because it really helps show growth in your business, whether it's for closed meetings with investors or for the general public. It's very important to be able to tell your origin stories. Then you have industry stories as well, when you talk about things that are happening in your industry and how it affects your business and how your business has been able to thrive in that industry. And then finally, we have things like the sustainability story as well as social impact stories, right? But again, like I talked about social impact stories before, that's when you talk about impact storytelling. But we're focusing more around business performance and telling our stories for business, right? Then now that we've talked about that, we've talked about the kind of stories that we can tell. We've talked about the customer success, employee success, origin stories. We've talked about industry stories. And then we've briefly mentioned sustainability, social impact, and social impact stories. Now, the question is, how exactly do we tell these stories? What you want me to write a story? How am I supposed to write this story? I did not study script writing. I am not a storyteller. I don't know how to gist. Exactly how do you expect me to tell a story about my business? Now, your story has two key functions, and that is to explain the why and the how. The why is your vision, is the overarching long theme mission of your business. That's the vision. And then you now have the how. The how is your strategy. How do you plan to get to the why? So it also describes how you plan to accomplish what you want to accomplish or what you hope to accomplish and how you plan to do so. Now, every story, whether it's business stories, whether it's a movie, whether it's a short film or whatever story, right? Even if you're looking at our folk tales, right? Or things like Tales by Moonlight, for those of us that remember what that is. These stories all follow a particular format, and it's a 3-point format, right? Which I would like us to always remember when we are telling our stories. The first one, or the first element in your story, is the background. When you start writing out your story, you give a bit of background, stats, data, identification of the issues. What is the pain point? What problem are you trying to solve? What happened, right? That is your background. Then you now have conflicts, right? Or the climax, as what most professionals would say. And this is just really the struggle or the problem that has been identified and needs to be solved. How has this problem impacted your operations? And then you now have the solutions or the resolution. This is the point where your conflict was resolved. It could either be positive or negative. What decisions did you make when you came in contact with the problem? How did it affect your numbers as a business? If possible, at this point, you should be able to talk about your percentage growth, your increased sales, market expansion, or maybe a reduction of sales, right? Because we go through different experiences while running a business. So always remember that when you're putting your story together, when you're putting the elements of your story together, always start with the background, the conflict, and the solution. To put that into context, or to put into an example of that, say, for instance, you had a customer who was trying to give a testimonial, who wants to give a testimonial about your product or your business. The first question would be, what was it like, or what was your business like before you came in contact with the problem? What led you to making that decision to use this product? And what has changed since using that product? So you see, I've asked questions, but it literally fits into the different aspects of telling a story or a business story. The background is what has happened or what happened that led you to get the product or the service. And then when you now have, and that is identifying the problem, when you've gotten that and you've now come in contact with the product or the service, how did it impact your business or your life positively, right? So if we're going to give another example, say as an upwardly mobile professional in Lagos State, I generally have an issue with moving around. So when you go from one meeting to another, you need to get some form of transportation because I do not own a car, for instance. And in having to search for a car, you always then have to look for taxis. And then the process of having to go outside, standing in the sun, looking for taxis, it became a main challenge for me. And most times it often caused me to miss my next meetings or be late for the next meeting. In the process, I came across a taxi hailing app or a ride hailing app. There's so many of them, but we'll use LagRide, a ride hailing app. And it saved me a lot of time in being able to meet my next meetings and making me more productive and effective as a professional in Lagos State. Pretty much. That is a story of the background of what the issue was. The issue was that I was unable to be able to get a particular taxi or automobile or transportation when I needed to. And then and that was the context, the problem, and then the products that I had to use and what it then did for me as an individual. So always remember that. Background, conflict, solution. Now, we understand that. And then it's how exactly do we effectively tell our business performance story? We can tell all these stories, but it's not effective if the audience doesn't understand what we're trying to say. So to be able to tell our business story effectively, we should be able to, one, identify our audience, know your audience. Understanding who you're communicating with is very crucial in determining the most effective way to tell your story. Your target audience, whether it be investors, whether it be a particular target group in your business or the sample size or whatever, you need to know your audience and understand the best way to communicate with them, right? Then you focus on your key metrics. So identify the most critical business performance metrics that you need for that presentation or that story and focus on them. So this is not when you come and start giving people too much information when you don't need to. If, say, I was talking to an investor, I would talk about sales, I would talk about turnover, I would talk about return on investment, I would talk about all the very financial heavy information because that's what they need to hear. If I'm talking to the general public, I would talk more around market size. I would talk more around the different pain points that have been solved with my business or with my product. So focus on what the key metrics are. Use visuals. I will talk a bit more around visuals, and that is the use of graphs and charts. So we'll just skim through that for now, but just using visuals is very important. Then emphasize the human element. Again, there are human beings that are using your product. So please, can you focus on the human beings as well? Can you use quotes, testimonials, things from actual people that have come in contact with your service or your product? And then tell a story, just like I said earlier, tell a story. We've talked about how we can tell the story, the elements of storytelling. So we'll move on from that. Then be honest and transparent. In the days of social media, I think a lot of times we tend to embellish what we put out there about our products, right? So maybe our market share is not as great as it is, but we put it out there and we want to make sure that we sound like the number one. If we all sound like the number one, then there will be no room for growth. So it's very important to be honest and transparent. Avoid exaggeration and embellishments. Present the facts, be honest. If you're talking to investors, be honest because they will find out eventually, right? And then keep it simple. Again, jargons, I mean, as you can tell from everything I've said, so putting too much information is really not my thing. So keep it simple so everyone can understand. Now, going back to visuals and going back to the importance of visuals, right? And please, if you have any questions, please drop your questions because I know that this is a lot of information. I'm trying as much as possible to give us like as much information as we can have at this moment, but please put in your questions and I'll be able to talk about it in a bit more detail later on. But just going back to visuals, right? Because I said I was going to touch more on visuals. Visuals are very important. Visuals, whether it be pictures, whether it's graphs, whether it's pie charts, whatever it is, it's very, very important. For a number of reasons, it simplifies our complex information. It grabs attention, right? So if you have like a nice picture, I often tell people a picture of someone smiling always gets attention of whoever it is that is viewing your content. It creates an emotional impact. There is that connection that people feel when they see pictures. It enhances retention. Chances are you will remember the visuals, whether it's a picture, whether it's a video. So if I write a testimonial, you might not remember it than if you see video content of the exact same testimonial. Why? Because you can connect to the person that is speaking. And then it also reinforces your key image. It reinforces your key image because people can actually remember. So visual aids does a lot in helping people understand the information that you are putting out there. So that's it. So I've actually covered quite a lot so far, but just going back to what Fumi said, like at the beginning, when she was talking about when is the appropriate time to tell your business story. It's not every day, right? It's not every day. Every day is not the appropriate time to tell your business story. But however, depending on who your target audience is, or who you're trying to convey information to, you can tell your story, say, in your quarterly or your annual reports, right? So if you're going to potential investors, if you're going to the public in, I would say the public, depends on the kind of organization that you are, the kind of business that you are, it's important to have your annual reports. Now, as a business, always have annual reports. At the end of the year or the Q1 of the next year, it is important to look at your books and put your annual reports together, right? But in addition to putting the annual reports together and you're putting out your finances and everything, always include stories in it, include testimonials, put a picture, put an actual testimonial, show your growth, because a few years from now, someone will pick up that annual report. And even though they can see the numbers, they would be more impacted by the stories that they are seeing, right? Then you have company events. Company events is also a good time to tell stories as well. And then what I normally say is landmark events. So if you have anything like landmark events, when you have landmark events for your business, right, it's always good to be able to communicate that with the general public because it shows growth, right? And so that's just the summary of business storytelling. So far, we've talked about the importance of communication. We've talked about why stories are effective. We've talked about the different kinds of stories to use for your business. We've talked about the elements of or the components of your story, so background, conflict, and solution. We've talked about the tips to telling your business performance, using visuals, and when exactly to tell your story. One thing that I haven't mentioned, which sort of is part of everything, is the importance of practice. Not all of us are natural storytellers. Not all of us were born with the gift of storytelling. So it's important that we are able to tell the stories. And the only way you can become good at it is to practice. Practice, practice, practice. The more you practice, tell the stories to friends, tell it to anybody who cares to hear, tell it to yourself, face the mirror and tell yourself. But the more you practice, the better you get at it. So my final thoughts is that to make a strong impact in telling your business story, remember to keep it simple. Use data and visuals to support your story. Make it relatable. Be authentic. And finally, practice, practice, practice. And I think on that point, I will take on questions now. So if you have any questions, please feel free. Fumi, I don't know if you have questions compiled, but if you have any questions, now would be the best time to ask. So I see that there's Olaleye Idowu who has asked, should storytelling is only from the business end? Yes, we're focusing more on the business storytelling for this particular class. So with my experience as a writer and blogger, what about storytelling perspective in giving news? Now, in giving news, it's literally the same thing, right? So if you're telling a story, even if it's to give news, you're still going to follow the same context, right? So you're going to talk about the background, what is happening, what's going on, what's the industry, what is it saying, right? Then you talk about the conflict, what has happened. But in talking about the conflict, you can then tie it to an individual, because when you're talking about your story, there's also an individual who has been impacted by it, right? So tie it to an individual, because then you build that emotional connection. And then when you tie it to an individual, you can then talk about the decisions that individual made and what was the resolution and solution that came out of it. So I hope that answers your question. I don't know if there are any more questions.
Oh, wow. Thank you very, very, very much, Sheila. That has been quite insightful, I must say. I mean, a whole lot. So I can imagine if I grabbed this much, I imagine how much our listeners here and participants would have really grabbed. I mean, importance of communicating your business, the importance. I mean, you were able to really simplify all of that, and when to tell your story, which is also very important as a business owner. When do you tell this story? When exactly is the right time to let people know how much you've done, how much growth you've done with your business, and then keeping it simple. Sometimes this storytelling can be overwhelming, where people even lose track of what exactly you're saying. But when you keep it simple and it resonates, and I mean, I really did key into that. Thank you very much, Sheila. And then putting that time frame to tell your story, rounding it up at least once or twice in a year, putting visuals to it, letting people know how much you've done, and that visuals is what keeps people in trend to what exactly you're trying to say. And to put it all together, you've really done well. Thank you very, very much, Sheila. Yes, we have some questions here. Although I would have wanted to pick it from the Q&A box first, but before it goes off, I'd like to pick the one from Olayemi Ayomba, who put it on the chat box. So he's saying, please, how can you help someone that is a fast talker and also a stammerer, who is an introvert, but the person is well-oriented business-wise? How would this kind of person tell their story?
That's very interesting. So personally, I am an introvert. I know most people would not believe it. But what I would tell you is, as an introvert, it's important to practice. I mean, I once wrote an article about public speaking tips for introverts. And you need to, one, it's practicing. Two, is starting from a place of comfort. What are you comfortable with? What you find is that a lot of times when people are introverts or they're stammering, it's because they want to start with the complex information first. Start with something that is easier for you and then build up on it, right? If you're a fast talker, it's very important to pace yourself. So when you know that you see yourself talking, just take it's almost like a beat, right? You talk and then you wait a bit. And this is really just for presenting. So this is more around presentation and public speaking than the actual storytelling. But I would just say, take your time, try to take your time, pace yourself and practice. Practicing actually helps a lot. One of the ways you can actually practice is if you have your smartphone, record yourself. And when you play it back, you can see, okay, how fast am I sounding? Do I need to slow down? What do I need to improve on?
Thank you very much, Sheila. And then we have another question here. It says storytelling from Olaleyedo. It said storytelling most times comes as a result of fiction. How does storytelling as well focus on reality? Because storytellers might want to go overboard. So how do you minimize it?
So first of all, we are all storytellers one way or the other. If you can gist with your friend, whether it's something that has happened or something that's about to happen, as long as you know how to gist, you're a storyteller, unless you want to tell me you don't know how to gist, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
We are all storytellers. So I see where you're focusing on, which is more on the fiction, but for business storytelling, we're looking more at the reality. And that's also what I said in the presentation. I said, focus on, be authentic and be real. This is not the time to over embellish your information. Yes, there are certain people that will go overboard, but I would say staying true to yourself and your business, it's important that you stick to the facts, stick to the data, because it can be verified. Anything you say can be verified, right? So stick to the facts and stick to the data.
Oh, great. So stick to the facts and stick to your data. Thank you very much, Sheila. We have another story, another question here, because we're talking about story, actually. So I think that is resonating with me already. Yeah, so this person say, can we use model to tell the story? Is it most, okay, I don't know what this person is saying, but he said, can we use model to tell the story? Visionary tell the story, most visionary tell the story. Yes, I think that's what
so I'm not quite clear on what you mean by model. So if you can just please explain what you mean by that.
Okay,
in terms of the model.
Ario, can you resend your question so that Sheila can attend to the question? But let me take another one. I think you have somebody here applying to be mentored by you, Sheila. Tosia Akiolu is saying, I applied to be mentored by Madam Sheila. Please, how can this happen? So you can assess my practice and help my business. Yeah, so you have an application here, Sheila. Okay, so there's another question here that says, where do testimonial come in? That is
so testimonials, yeah. So we talked about testimonials in customer success stories. So that's where your testimonials come in. Your testimonials is your additional validation that, you know, there are people who are using your products or your service and they are happy with it. So that is exactly where testimonials is. Now, as a business owner, how do you ensure that your testimonials follow the storytelling format to make it more impactful? Because someone can give a testimonial and no one would care, right? Yeah. It's very simple. The questions you ask, you tell your customers to answer in their video or in their testimonial is what will help you shape that story, right? So again, follow the BCS model, which is, what is the background? What was it like? What led you to using these products? How has it been since using the product? Have you seen any positive impact in your business or in, you know, in life or in family since you started using the product? If you can have questions that follow that, you will find that your testimonials will be a lot more effective.
Thank you very much for that, Sheila. Okay, so this person is saying, please, can we use a specific product to do storytelling as an example for us, e.g., plantain flour? I guess this person is probably into.
I think at this point, I'm going to Sylvia. At this point, Sylvia, I'm going to send you an invoice because you want me to use your products to tell a story. So if we are going to use a product like plantain flour, how do you want to tell? Now, are you telling the story from a business person or from a customer? So let's look at it from a business person, right? So from the owner of the business, like Sylvia. So you can start out with talking about how difficult it was to get a particular, like what led you to go into plantain flour? What led you to go into it, for instance? So if I would say, you know, being able to find good quality plantain flour in Lagos had been a major challenge. A lot of the ones that I would see in the market were dirty, they had stones in them and things like that. And then it led me to look for how to, you know, plantain flour that was of good quality. I couldn't find one, and which is what led me to say, you know what, let me go ahead and start producing my own. In selling my own and producing my own, I am able to improve the livelihoods of families because now it's good quality plantain. And in addition to that, I'm also able to help farmers who are helping process this plantains, right? Which then goes into the processing for the plantain flour. That's just an example, given the background, given the issue, and then the solution, right? So that's just an example in that. But again, more practice. More practice.
It actually sounded simple, but trust me, a whole lot will go into that. Okay, so we have Lisa Idia here saying, is storytelling also same as interviews with clients?
No, so it's different. It's quite different. But it depends on how you want to look at it. So when I say interviews with clients, interviews with clients can be more for your monitoring and more for like a feedback process, right? So you're asking them, what are the challenges? How can we improve? All of that. That is more of interviews, right? That's more of, it's a two-way thing. With storytelling, on the other hand, what you want to get from your clients is a success story. You want them to be able to tell you why using your product or your service has been of benefit to them. So that's really what storytelling is. Now, storytelling here is really just a tool in conveying that information. While we are focusing so much on storytelling, we're saying, how do we improve our business performance? How do we communicate our business performance using what is relatable? And that is where storytelling comes into place, because it is relatable. So that's, and I hope that answers your question, Lisa.
Hopefully it does. Thank you very much. So we have Joy Ayuba here, who says, please, ma'am, as an accountant, you made mention of making your annual report visual by putting some pictures. She's asking, how do we engage an annual report by telling a story?
Sorry, I'm trying to find that part. How can we use visuals in our annual reports?
Exactly.
Okay, so a few things. One, which I always focus on, your front page of your annual report. I find that a lot of times it's just blank paper, and my fellow accountants do that a lot. So it's just blank paper and say financial reports as at December, financial statements as at December 31st, 2022, for instance. Your cover page is an opportunity to be able to use visuals. So use a picture. A picture can be the picture of employees. It can be a picture of a customer. It can be a very memorable picture. Like I mentioned while I was talking earlier, pictures of people smiling. This is one of my tips, but pictures of people smiling goes a long way because it's very welcoming, right? So before you go into the numbers, it's welcoming. Then in your reports, have a section, whether it's use it as a breaker between different chapters, have a section where you have a testimonial. So maybe you have done something, or maybe you have increased sales, and then you can now put testimonial. So you can put like a testimonial section, a picture of your customer and what they had to say. Because it's an annual report, it's going to be written. So just what they had to say with a picture. And you can do that. You can put 2 or 3. You don't need to put too much, right? So you don't have to put it in your whole report. But just having that helps whoever it is that comes across your annual report to connect better.
Thank you very much. So Wasiu Oyedepo is saying, what of storytelling? Okay, can storytelling be used as a means of educating?
That's a very interesting question. And I think most of us know that answer. I mean, if you remember your grandmothers or your parents, anytime they wanted to tell you not to do something, there was always a story attached to it. They will always tell you how one time this happened and how somebody that stole 2 eggs, something happened to them and blah, blah, blah. So storytelling can be used for educating. It actually helps in conveying your information. And it actually helps in the audience being able to retain. So whether it is using storytelling, maybe you're facilitating or something and you want to talk about a particular experience, having a story attached to it will always help.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Ari Oluwatosin is asking that, can we use influencers to tell our business story?
Influencers, I think it depends on what message you are trying to convey. I strongly recommend that it be influencers that has come across your product or service, or who has used your product or service, because then they are telling a story from a personal experience, as opposed to what they are being told. As opposed to what they're being told. So it's important that if you want to use influencers to tell your business story, please ensure that they have used your product, or they have come across your service, so that when they're telling these stories, they are telling it from a personal experience.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Okay, so we have Mubo Adedoko asking, please, can you come up with an acronym? I've learned about PSA. Is there an acronym that can summarize the whole points so we can remember?
That's going to be a very long acronym, but let's just stick to, I would say, let's stick to the elements of storytelling, right? When telling stories, remember what I call the BCS model: background, conflict, and solution. What is the background? What is the conflict? and how was that conflict solved? What was the solution to that? So we can work with that. We can work with BCS. I hope we remember that. I would think of a funkier way so that it can sound like, PAS or PAS, but for now, let's stick to that.
All right, thank you very much, Sheila. So we have another question from an anonymous attendee that says, what are some cost-effective ways to tell business stories for small businesses in their early stages? Because most small businesses do not have a marketing or advertising budgets.
First of all, I think when the team puts out notification for any digital marketing masterclass, please sign up for that because that will definitely help you. It's a very simple thing. When you don't have a budget for production, there's something that is called user-generated content, which means that you literally solicit your customers to be able to tell stories about coming across your business or your products, right? And then if it's like social media, you can then repost it. So that's one of it. When you repost it, you can then do your sponsored posts, right? So whether it's, I don't know how much you can use, they're different, depends on your budget. That's the beauty of social media. You can then do your sponsored posts to ensure that the right kind of people are seeing that. Another way is by collaboration. I think it's very important for you to be able to collaborate with other business owners, right? So if you find a way to be able to collaborate or some sort of partnership, especially with someone who has come across your product or your service, you find that it would help you increase awareness, because the focus here is how do you increase awareness with that. So using user-generated content actually would help, and then collaboration as well.
Okay, great. Collaboration. Thank you very much. Okay, so we also have another anonymous attendee saying, how can I encourage my customers to share their testimonials?
Oh, this is usually tough, right? Because customers will say, after all, I'm paying you. Why are you stressing me?
Exactly.
So it's always very important to, first of all, tell them why you need, because I think most times people just say, oh, can you just like, share, tell everybody about me? No, I don't owe you that as a customer. But what you can do is you can ensure that they buy into your vision. The mistake that a lot of business owners make is that they do not allow their customers buy into their vision. It's just, I've sold to you, and then they move on from it. By building a relationship one way or the other, and I'm not saying to be best friends with everybody, but by building some sort of relationship, you will be able to get them to give testimonials. I mean, there are certain businesses that no brainer, because I enjoyed the service, I enjoyed the quality of the product and everything, I would go ahead and give a testimonial regardless if they asked or not, all right? So build that relationship. At the same time, tell them why it means a lot to you, and so that it would help other people to know that your product is out there and how it will impact the lives of other people positively. Now, if your customers refuse, it's okay. They are not bad people. So there will always be someone out there that would also be open to giving testimonials and sharing testimonials.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Thank you very much. So it doesn't mean that if the customer says no, you outrightly write them out. There's still other means. Okay, so we also have, I don't know, we keep having anonymous. Would it be good to discuss litigatory activities during the financial year and how the company overcame or provide for it if it has to do with toxic assets? Managing that, I guess.
That's a very, very good question. Again, going back to the point of knowing your audience, this is not the kind of information you want to give to the general public, right? Because it can go in any direction. But if this is information you have to give your investors or to give to management or to more of like internal presentations, it would be a good time to discuss it. But again, do not focus so much on the negative. focus on what's led to it and how you were able to overcome it, right? And also what the key learnings are. The mistake a lot of times is that people focus so much on the negative without talking about their key learnings. So if you say, you know, this was a particular experience, this was the impact, however, we're able to overcome it, and this is what it has led to for the business, that would be the best way. But again, know your audience, right? Know the audience that you are presenting this to. It's not something that you present to the general public.
Okay, knowing your audience before making such decision. Thank you very much, Sheila. Okay, so we have Olaleye Idowu who says, we just had the election concluded in Lagos. Before the election, there was storytelling regarding the journey so far by the current administration, now re-elected. How can storytelling be done x-raying into the future? As we know, governance is a big business as well.
So storytelling is about telling what has happened. It's not about forecasting. So I would say we should keep that in mind. However, the use of storytelling can be used to portray the vision, to portray what you would like to achieve, right? So that's just the way. Let's just always remember that in terms of storytelling. So you can use it to sort of portray vision and what you would like to achieve for the future.
Okay. All right, so an anonymous attendee is asking if his business wants to engage an advertising agency, how would he ensure that they tell the company's story effectively and accurately?
Okay, so this is, again, another good question. It's like going back to back with questions. So I think the mistake that a lot of businesses make when addressing advertising agencies is that they do not give a detailed brief. And by brief, it means a detailed document that says what you are trying to achieve. What are your objectives? So before engaging an advertising agency, make sure you have a brief, a document that says, this is where I'm coming from, the reason I am doing this, and what I hope to achieve, right? The specific things, the key messages that you want communicated, and the objectives of what you are looking to achieve with that, with your campaign with the advertising agent. So that's one of the ways. So even if it looks like the advertising agency is going in a different direction, you can always reel them back into that document.
Oh, great. Okay, so one anonymous attendee wants to know how he can get customers' consent in providing videos for his company.
Yes, so it's very important to get consent, especially now with data protection. So say, for instance, you were going to do the video recording, you should have a very short, there are a lot of templates out there, like a short contract where they could sign. If it's user generated, so maybe it's something that they have posted online, make sure you chat with them in the DMs to say, please, do you provide consent for us to be able to use your video for this purpose? If they say yes, then you can go ahead. So always ensure that you get consent before you use any content from customers or you feature them in your videos.
Thank you for that. So Sylvia is asking, Sylvia says, please, you made mention of particular time to use storytelling. She says, what about using it every day to market our product online or on social media?
Okay, so first of all, for that, you need to have a social media strategy. Yes, you can use it, but I would not recommend every day online. Reason because there's something called fatigue. Your audience will get tired of hearing your stories. And at some point you will run out of stories to tell, right? Because you want to keep it real, you want to stay to the facts. So when you have your social media strategy, you'll be able to do a combination of things, right? So we talked about the different types of stories. We have customer success, we have employee success, we have origin stories, we talk about industry stories as well. Try to make sure you have a mix. So even if you're saying this is what is happening in the food industry or something at the moment, and then tying it to your product, or talk about a particular employee and tying it to the product as well. And then you can now use testimonials. And then you can now use like your own personal experience in being the business owner. Always ensure you have a mix. But I would not recommend a daily storytelling tactic when it comes to using storytelling for advertising or using it for social media.
Okay. So Joy Ayuba says, as an entrepreneur who do not have an employee or core team member, do I need to tell an employee's story during fundraising to investors?
No, you don't. And because you don't have employees, that would be fictitious. That would be like a case of me, myself, and I. You don't. But at the same time, you are also your own employee. So, which means that you should be able to tell your own story during fundraising to investors.
Okay. And then Victor Etim says, at what point do I know that my storytelling is having effect on my customer base that can lead to sales?
When they buy. That's the when they buy or when they refer you to someone that buys, right? So that's when you know that your storytelling is having an effect. I mean, I need to be able to see tangible measurements, right? And so for me, my measurement is seeing that people are actually, if it's sales for your product, are actually buying. It's increasing to the number of leads for your product.
Thank you very much. And then last on the Q&A box here, Canva Foods on Wheel says, how can LSETF help transform stories to impact our community apart from the conventional method of venture capital grant loans because of the great opportunities that abound here in Nigeria? Okay, so I think this person is asking how else we can help.
I mean, yeah. So there's quite a number of ways that we can help. But I'm just focused on the part where it says help transform stories to impact our community. I know one of the things that we do under the business support is our access to markets, and we have quite a number of stories and testimonials from beneficiaries who have come across our access to markets, where they're given opportunities to increase their visibility. Because regardless of how much you are able to raise, regardless of the loans and the grants, you need people to be able to know about your product. You need to be given that stage for you to be able to tell your own stories and your product stories. So our access to market under our business support unit is actually the perfect fit for that. So I'm hoping that you sign up.
Yeah, thank you very much. Last year, we have an anonymous attendee who says, how can we use storytelling as a marketing tool, especially using it on social media?
I think the whole presentation today can be used as a marketing tool. But just to briefly answer that, I would say using testimonials. So testimonials from your customers, also using your origin stories as well for landmark events, especially. Then also, I would say mostly testimonials, really, to be honest, when you look at social media. But it also depends on, because, social media is vast. There's different strategy for different ones. What you will use for LinkedIn. For LinkedIn, most likely, I would use industry statistics, right? I would use industry stories. For Instagram, because Instagram is more visual, I would use testimonials for Instagram. If I was using Twitter, I would use more of written testimonials or more like engagement in conversation, right? Telling a story and also and having a conversation. If I was using TikTok, I would follow the trends. And because the trends always help with increasing your visibility, I would follow the trends, but in also following the trends, you're also able to tell a story. So I know so for those of us who might use TikTok, you will see there are quite a number of people that will say, oh, I woke up today because I needed to do this, and then I saw this. So that always helps. So there are quite a number of people that are very good with storytelling on TikTok. So I would say that identify what channel you're looking at and craft your story for different ones.
Oh, wow. Thank you very, very much, Sheila. It has been a very interesting, educated, and insightful session, I must say. Thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge. And for our participants, we say thank you all very, very much for staying on the session. I believe it has been very, very insightful and educating for you as well. And as business owners, I want to believe that you must have picked up what would work for your business. How do you make your business storytelling more impactful? How do you tell your story? How do you round up your year by putting out visuals on your reporting and making it more explicit, let it resonate? And all of these encompassing has been what Sheila has touched on. And sincerely, if I happen to want to go into business today, I think I can just do that, without any itch with what I've learned from Sheila today. So thank you very, very much, Sheila. Thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge. We really appreciate you being on the session today, and we do not take it for granted. We hope to have you again because we want to talk more. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much to all. Yeah. So for all of our participants, I hope that you really shared knowledge with us, and I hope we have picked a lot from what she has shared with us. And it would be nice to just say thank you. Sheila, we have a lot of thank you here in the chat box for you. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. We have a lot of it here. Thank you very much. I do not know if Sheila has a last word for us before we round up the session. Sheila, any last word from you, please?
Okay, so I see, I think I said my last words earlier, but I think I'll just say, for everyone that's asking for a copy, I know that the presentation will be sent. So yeah, so when you have the presentation, then you can also all that information, you can also take your time, but always remember, practice, practice, practice. It's going to take a lot of, it's not something that comes naturally to everyone. So please always practice.
On that note, we say a big thank you and we'll round up this session today. For our participants, kindly follow LSETF on all social media platforms to get first-hand information on all our programs. We have a lot of programs. For the last question that was being asked on how LSETF can help, if you follow us on all social media platforms, you would get first-hand information on this kind of programs and events that can help to put your businesses out there, business opportunities, access to markets, and access to business acceleration programs, advisory sessions, master classes. All of these we put on the social media platforms. So please follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, follow us on everywhere that you can get information firsthand. And our next session is scheduled to hold on the 5th of April, and it is themed Business Sustainability and Profits in an Inflationary Environment. Trust me, you don't want to miss that session. We will be sending after this session, by tomorrow, you would be getting our YouTube link, the slides for this session, and as well as the link to join the next session, which is holding on the 5th of April. Thank you all very much for staying on this session. We are hoping that you've learned a lot, and we also hope that you will be imbibing all that you have learned in your business. And trust me, like I would always end my session, I say LSETF is your partner in ensuring the growth of your business. Thank you all very much for being on the session. Hope to see you again on our next session. Do have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.